The world today is full of noise, advice, shortcuts, and promises about attraction, but very few of them speak about the inner foundation that actually creates lasting desire. Marcus Aurelius lived nearly 2,000 years ago, yet the truths he wrote for himself in silence still apply to modern relationships. He never tried to impress, seduce, or manipulate. He focused on one thing only: becoming a man of order in a chaotic world. When a man is ordered inside, his presence alone begins to affect others. Women especially are sensitive to this inner order. They may not explain it in words, but they feel it. Pleasure, in its deepest sense, does not come from excitement or novelty. It comes from peace, trust, and emotional alignment. A woman's mind is constantly scanning her environment for safety, not just physical safety, but emotional safety. Is this man predictable in his values? Is he stable in his moods? Does he react with anger, insecurity, or control when things do not go his way? Or does he remain centered, calm, and composed? Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man should not allow his soul to be disturbed by external events, because disturbance is a sign of inner disorder. When a man is easily disturbed, that disturbance spreads to everyone around him. When he is calm, that calm spreads as well. This is one of the deepest switches of pleasure. A woman feels relief around a man who does not create emotional storms. Relief allows her body to relax. Relaxation allows attraction to grow naturally. Many men think attraction is about creating tension, but real attraction is about removing unnecessary tension. A man who is always trying to prove himself, always seeking validation, always afraid of losing attention, unknowingly creates pressure. Pressure suffocates desire. Marcus Aurelius warned against living for the approval of others, because the moment you need approval, you lose freedom. A man who has self-respect does not beg for attention. He does not fear silence. He does not panic when responses are slow. He understands that his worth is not measured by someone else's reaction. This self-respect is felt immediately. Women feel pleasure when they are chosen by a man who stands firmly on his own ground. They feel discomfort when they sense that a man's emotional balance depends on them. One feels like freedom, the other feels like responsibility. Pleasure grows where there is freedom. Another powerful element is presence. Most people are physically present but mentally absent. They listen while thinking about what to say next. They nod while waiting for their turn to speak. Marcus Aurelius practiced attention as a form of discipline. When a man gives full attention, without interruption, without judgment, without distraction, a woman feels something rare. She feels understood. Understanding is not agreeing with everything. It is making space for someone's inner world. When a woman feels heard deeply, her defenses soften, her mind opens. Emotional intimacy begins, and emotional intimacy is a form of pleasure that lasts far longer than excitement. It creates connection rather than stimulation. Discipline also plays a silent but crucial role. A man who cannot govern himself cannot make others feel secure. Marcus Aurelius believed that self-control was the highest form of power. Discipline shows itself in small, consistent actions. Waking up on time, taking care of the body, keeping promises, speaking truthfully. These things may seem ordinary, but they signal reliability. Reliability creates trust. Trust allows closeness. A woman may not consciously list these traits, but her nervous system notices them. She feels calmer around a man whose life is not chaotic. Calmness is deeply pleasurable because it allows her to rest emotionally. Purpose is another force that shapes attraction. A man without direction often clings to relationships for meaning. A man with purpose brings meaning into relationships without forcing it. Marcus Aurelius lived with a strong sense of duty. He understood that pleasure without purpose becomes empty. A man who is focused on his path does not revolve his entire existence around gaining approval. He values his time. He moves with intention. This creates gravity. People are drawn to gravity. Women feel pleasure around men who are going somewhere, not because of ambition alone, but because direction feels safe. A man who knows where he is headed does not drag others into confusion. Calm under pressure is another signal that speaks louder than words. Life is unpredictable. Stress reveals character. A man who reacts with anger, blame, or emotional collapse creates instability. A man who pauses, breathes, and responds thoughtfully creates trust. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to meet difficulty without bitterness. When a woman sees a man remain steady in challenge, she feels protected emotionally. Not controlled, not dominated, but supported by composure. This composure reduces fear, and where fear fades, pleasure grows. Integrity binds all these qualities together. Integrity is alignment between words and actions. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man should live in such a way that he does not need to hide. Women are extremely sensitive to inconsistency. When a man says one thing and does another, trust breaks quietly. But when his behavior matches his values, trust builds silently. Trust deepens connection. Connection deepens pleasure. Many men search for techniques, but techniques without character are hollow. You cannot perform calm. You cannot fake discipline forever. Eventually, the inner state reveals itself. Women do not resist pleasure. They resist instability, unpredictability, and emotional burden. When a man removes those burdens by mastering himself, pleasure arises naturally. Marcus Aurelius would remind us that the work is never about controlling others. It is about governing the self. When the self is governed, relationships fall into order without force. Attraction becomes a byproduct, not a goal. This is the foundation upon which deeper connection is built, and this foundation must be strong before anything lasting can grow. When a man understands that attraction is not something to be demanded, but something that emerges, his behavior naturally slows down. He stops rushing moments. He stops trying to control outcomes. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that impatience is a sign of inner resistance to reality. A patient man is not passive. He is grounded. Patience tells a woman that this man is not trying to extract something from her. He is not in a hurry to claim, define, or possess. This absence of pressure feels freeing. Freedom is pleasurable. A woman feels she can move at her own pace without being pushed emotionally. Many men confuse intensity with depth. They speak too much, reveal too fast, promise too early. But depth is built through consistency over time. Marcus Aurelius believed that anything truly good is tested by time. A man who allows connection to unfold naturally shows confidence in himself and in reality. That confidence communicates security. Another subtle but powerful switch is emotional responsibility. A man who blames others for his moods, frustrations, or disappointments becomes a burden. A man who owns his emotions becomes a source of stability. Marcus Aurelius wrote that no one can harm you unless you allow it through your judgment. When a man takes responsibility for his inner state, he does not punish others for how he feels. A woman does not have to walk on eggshells around him. She does not have to manage his reactions. This freedom from emotional labor is deeply pleasurable. It allows her to relax into the interaction instead of monitoring it. Silence is another underestimated element. Many men fear silence because it exposes insecurity. They rush to fill gaps with words, jokes, or explanations. But silence, when held with calm presence, creates space. Marcus Aurelius valued silence as a way to observe rather than react. A man who is comfortable with silence signals inner fullness. He is not afraid of emptiness because he is not empty. Women feel this. Silence becomes a shared moment rather than an awkward one. In that shared stillness, connection deepens quietly. Respect for boundaries is another key that unlocks trust. A man who pushes boundaries, even subtly, creates tension. A man who honors boundaries creates safety. Marcus Aurelius believed that justice begins with respecting the limits of others. When a woman sees that a man does not pressure her for time, attention, or emotion, she feels respected. Respect dissolves fear. Fear blocks pleasure. The absence of fear allows pleasure to emerge organically. Confidence without dominance is another important quality. True confidence does not need to overpower. It does not compete unnecessarily. It does not seek to win every conversation. Marcus Aurelius knew that strength does not announce itself. A man who can disagree calmly, who does not become defensive, who does not need to be right, feels secure in himself. This security is felt as emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is deeply attractive because it promises peace rather than conflict. A woman feels that disagreements will not turn into battles. This expectation of peace is pleasurable because it reduces anticipation of stress. Consistency in behavior builds emotional rhythm. When a man is unpredictable in his attention, affection, or values, it creates anxiety. Anxiety may feel like excitement at first, but it quickly becomes exhausting. Marcus Aurelius valued steadiness over intensity. A steady man allows a woman's emotions to settle. Settled emotions allow deeper bonding. Bonding creates a pleasure that is not sharp, but enduring. Authenticity also plays a central role. A man who performs a role eventually collapses under the weight of pretense. Marcus Aurelius warned against living a borrowed life. A man who is honest about who he is, including his limits, creates trust. He does not exaggerate achievements or hide flaws. This honesty allows a woman to feel she is interacting with a real human being, not an image. Realness is comforting. Comfort is pleasurable. Another quiet switch is humility. Not self-deprecation, but grounded humility. A man who can admit when he is wrong, who can learn, who does not inflate his ego, feels safe. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of his own imperfections despite his power. Humility dissolves power struggles. Without power struggles, connection flows smoothly. Smooth connection feels good. Emotional generosity is also important. This does not mean overgiving or self-sacrifice. It means kindness without expectation. Marcus Aurelius believed that goodness should be practiced without keeping score. When a man is kind without demanding something in return, a woman feels valued rather than indebted. Indebtedness creates pressure. Value creates warmth. Warmth creates pleasure. A man who is grounded in his values does not adapt his personality to please. He adapts his behavior to be respectful, but his core remains stable. This stability creates predictability of character. A woman may not know what will happen tomorrow, but she feels she knows who he will be. That knowledge is comforting. Comfort deepens attachment. Attachment built on comfort rather than fear is healthy and pleasurable. Emotional independence is another crucial factor. Marcus Aurelius believed that relying too much on external things weakens the soul. A man who has his own emotional resources does not drain others. He does not seek constant reassurance. He does not panic in moments of distance. This independence allows closeness to be chosen rather than forced. Chosen closeness feels good. Forced closeness feels heavy. A man who can enjoy connection while also being content alone creates balance. Balance is attractive because it feels natural rather than desperate. Over time, all these qualities blend into something that cannot be named easily, but is felt clearly. A woman may not be able to explain why she feels drawn, relaxed, or comfortable, but she feels it consistently. Marcus Aurelius understood that virtue works quietly. It does not demand recognition. It reveals itself through behavior. When a man embodies calm, discipline, presence, and integrity, pleasure becomes a side effect rather than a goal. This is why chasing pleasure often fails, but cultivating character succeeds. The Stoic path is not about denying desire, it is about aligning desire with wisdom. When desire is aligned with wisdom, it no longer creates chaos. It creates harmony. And harmony is deeply pleasurable because it feels right, balanced, and human. As this harmony develops, something subtle but important begins to happen. The man no longer measures moments by how much attention he receives or how quickly things progress. He measures them by how aligned he remains with his values. Marcus Aurelius believed that peace comes from living in agreement with nature, and human nature responds to steadiness more than excitement. When a man is not internally rushed, his energy feels spacious. A woman senses that she does not have to hurry her emotions to match his expectations. This lack of urgency removes pressure from the interaction. Pressure narrows the emotional field, while spaciousness allows feelings to breathe. Breathing room is pleasurable because it gives emotions time to form naturally instead of being forced. Another element that deepens attraction is emotional clarity. Many people are emotionally confusing because they are confused within themselves. They send mixed signals, change moods rapidly, and speak from unresolved feelings. Marcus Aurelius emphasized clarity of thought as a daily discipline. A man who is clear about his intentions, respectful in his communication, and consistent in his behavior creates emotional transparency. A woman does not have to guess where she stands. Guessing creates anxiety. Clarity creates calm. Calm allows connection to deepen. Emotional clarity is not about revealing everything at once. It is about not hiding behind games or manipulation. When a man says what he means and means what he says, his presence feels honest. Honesty relaxes the mind. A relaxed mind is more open to pleasure. Another powerful but often overlooked factor is emotional containment. This means the ability to hold emotions without spilling them uncontrollably onto others. Marcus Aurelius practiced this by observing his thoughts without immediately acting on them. A man who can feel anger without exploding, sadness without collapsing, and desire without desperation creates a sense of emotional maturity. A woman feels that she does not have to absorb his emotional excess. She can share space with him without being overwhelmed. This containment is deeply reassuring. Reassurance is pleasurable because it reduces subconscious stress. Over time, a man like this becomes associated with peace rather than drama. Peace is addictive in a world full of chaos. Respect for time is another quiet signal of value. A man who respects his own time naturally respects the time of others. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the limited nature of life. A man who does not waste time on meaningless conflict, unnecessary jealousy, or endless validation-seeking feels intentional. Intentional living creates a sense of direction even in simple moments. A woman feels that moments spent with him matter because they are chosen, not filler. Chosen moments feel special. Special moments create emotional warmth. Emotional warmth deepens pleasure. Another subtle switch is emotional steadiness during closeness. Some men become unstable when intimacy increases. They become overly attached, fearful, or controlling. Marcus Aurelius warned against allowing desire to disturb inner balance. A man who can enjoy closeness without losing himself communicates emotional strength. He does not cling. He does not withdraw abruptly. He remains consistent. Consistency during closeness builds trust. Trust allows vulnerability. Vulnerability deepens emotional pleasure. A woman feels safe opening up when she senses that closeness will not be punished with pressure or fear. Non-reactivity is another Stoic principle that plays a powerful role. A man who reacts strongly to small things creates emotional volatility. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to pause between stimulus and response. A man who does this in relationships feels grounded. He does not escalate misunderstandings into conflicts. He does not take things personally that are not meant personally. This emotional intelligence reduces conflict before it forms. Reduced conflict creates ease. Ease is pleasurable because it allows focus on connection rather than defense. Another quality that deepens attraction is grounded masculinity, not performative masculinity. Performative masculinity tries to prove strength. Grounded masculinity embodies it quietly. Marcus Aurelius never needed to remind others of his power. A man who is comfortable in his strength does not dominate conversations or assert control unnecessarily. He allows space for others to express themselves. This balance of strength and openness feels safe and attractive. Safety combined with strength creates a unique emotional response that many people describe as chemistry, but it is actually nervous system alignment. Humor also plays a role, but not forced humor. Humor that comes from ease rather than insecurity. Marcus Aurelius appreciated lightness without losing seriousness. A man who can laugh without mocking, joke without belittling, and smile without seeking approval creates emotional warmth. Warmth softens defenses. Softened defenses allow pleasure to surface. Another important element is acceptance. A man who tries to change a woman, correct her constantly, or mold her into his expectations creates resistance. Marcus Aurelius believed that people act according to their nature. Acceptance does not mean agreeing with everything. It means not fighting reality unnecessarily. A woman feels respected when she is accepted as she is. Respect increases comfort. Comfort deepens attraction. Over time, the accumulation of these qualities creates emotional resonance. Emotional resonance is when two people feel aligned without effort. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It feels natural. Marcus Aurelius would say this is the result of living virtuously rather than strategically. Strategy seeks outcomes. Virtue creates conditions. When conditions are right, outcomes emerge on their own. Pleasure, in this sense, is not something taken. It is something shared. It grows from mutual ease, trust, and understanding. A man who walks this path may not attract everyone, but he attracts those who value depth over drama. And that attraction tends to last longer because it is rooted in character rather than performance. This is why Stoic principles remain relevant. They address the inner causes rather than external symptoms. When the inner state is calm, clear, and grounded, relationships reflect that state. Attraction becomes less about effort and more about alignment. And alignment feels good, not just emotionally, but deeply, quietly, and sustainably. When a man consistently embodies calm, clarity, discipline, and integrity, his presence becomes magnetic without effort. Women do not consciously analyze every action. They feel the pattern of steadiness in their nervous system. Marcus Aurelius often reflected that the mind and body respond to harmony more than words. A man who lives in harmony with his own values creates an environment in which others can relax, feel safe, and flourish. Emotional pressure fades, and the natural response is pleasure. Many men mistake excitement for attraction. They think that fast-paced drama, surprises, and constant attention generate interest. But real pleasure is often quiet. It grows in stability, in the ability to feel seen without being judged, heard without being corrected, and valued without conditions. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about self-control, not to deny enjoyment, but to maintain clarity and focus. A man who exercises self-control with his emotions, habits, and responses is consistently attractive because he signals reliability, patience, and balance. These are qualities that create deep emotional comfort, and emotional comfort is experienced as pleasure by women who are sensitive to instability. Another subtle switch is authenticity expressed without ego. A man who is authentic is not performing to impress, not shaping his persona to gain approval, and not pretending to be more than he is. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of living according to one's nature and reason. A man who does this exudes quiet confidence, which is felt intuitively. Women sense authenticity as a form of trustworthiness and enjoy being around someone whose inner world matches his outer behavior. This form of honesty feels pleasurable because it allows her to lower defenses without fear of deception. Compassion is also a silent but powerful factor. Marcus Aurelius frequently reflected on humanity and the importance of acting with kindness without attachment to outcomes. A man who is compassionate does not exploit vulnerability, but offers support when appropriate. Compassion, when genuine and balanced, communicates emotional safety and creates connection. Women feel this as comfort and warmth, which grows into long-term emotional pleasure. Emotional regulation during conflict is another key element. Many people lose control when disagreements arise, creating fear and tension. Marcus Aurelius taught that disturbance is created by one's own judgment. A man who pauses, observes, and responds thoughtfully during conflict demonstrates emotional mastery. Women sense this as protection rather than control. Protection in this sense is psychological. The knowledge that emotional space is safe, that one will not be manipulated or coerced, that reactions are measured. Psychological protection produces deep, lasting pleasure because it removes the subtle stress that often accompanies intimacy. Humility adds another layer to attraction. It signals awareness of limits, willingness to learn, and an absence of inflated ego. Marcus Aurelius reflected that no one is self-sufficient. Acknowledging one's flaws is a mark of wisdom. A man who practices humility communicates that he is approachable and trustworthy. Women feel relief in such presence. They are not intimidated or forced into hierarchical dynamics, allowing space for genuine connection. Patience in understanding her inner world is another switch. Many men rush to conclusions or attempt to fix problems that are not theirs to solve. Marcus Aurelius wrote about understanding before acting, observing before judging. A man who listens patiently, without judgment or expectation, allows a woman to express herself fully. This patient presence signals respect for her individuality and intelligence. Respect nurtures pleasure because she feels acknowledged without manipulation or control. Consistency over time reinforces these qualities. One-day demonstrations of calm, discipline, or integrity may impress briefly, but they do not create lasting emotional resonance. Marcus Aurelius's philosophy emphasizes daily practice. Virtue is built moment by moment. A man who consistently shows emotional maturity, discipline, presence, humility, and patience creates a reliable environment. Reliability, as previously noted, is perceived as safe. Safety leads to pleasure. Small acts of kindness, honesty, and respect, when maintained consistently, compound into a sense of stability. Stability is attractive because it reduces anxiety and creates space for shared enjoyment, whether in conversation, leisure, or emotional intimacy. Transparency in intentions is another important signal. When a man's words match his behavior and his goals align with his actions, he communicates clarity without needing to over-explain. Marcus Aurelius encouraged introspection to ensure actions aligned with reason. A woman senses this alignment. She feels she is engaging with a person who is coherent, predictable in his values, yet dynamic in life. Coherence is pleasurable because unpredictability in core character is stressful, even if superficially exciting. Emotional generosity, expressed without expectation of return, also creates subtle attraction. Marcus Aurelius viewed goodness as its own reward. A man who gives attention, support, and care without calculating returns or manipulating outcomes communicates that connection is valued intrinsically. Women experience this as warmth and authenticity, which fosters trust, emotional ease, and a sense of being genuinely appreciated. Grounded masculinity, when not performed for show but expressed naturally through action and presence, signals stability and capability. Marcus Aurelius embodied power through discipline, wisdom, and moral strength rather than spectacle. A man who does the same conveys competence without arrogance. Competence, when coupled with calm, integrity, and patience, produces a subconscious signal of reliability. Women are neurologically attuned to these signals. They register as pleasurable because they indicate safety and trustworthiness. Shared humor, when light and sincere, adds emotional pleasure. Marcus Aurelius recognized that life is a mix of seriousness and lightness. A man who can gently laugh at himself, find joy in ordinary moments, and share levity without belittling communicates comfort and ease. Pleasure is heightened in such environments because laughter reduces tension, increases connection, and fosters positive emotional states. Acceptance without enabling is another powerful switch. A man who accepts her individuality, her choices, and her pace without imposing judgment or attempting to control outcomes signals emotional maturity. Marcus Aurelius taught acceptance of reality as it is, not as one wishes it to be. Acceptance communicates respect and understanding, which feels pleasurable because it allows natural expression without fear of criticism. Over time, these qualities accumulate into a rhythm of interaction that feels harmonious. Emotional resonance develops, which is the subtle alignment of energy, pace, and presence between two people. This resonance is not loud, dramatic, or forced. It is quiet, felt in shared silences, mutual understanding, and relaxed engagement. Pleasure in this sense is holistic, emotional, psychological, and even physiological, because the nervous system experiences reduced stress and increased safety. A man who embodies all these qualities does not need to chase attention or force outcomes. He is not consumed by the question of how to create attraction, because attraction arises naturally as a consequence of his inner state. Marcus Aurelius would argue that this is the truest form of influence, living rightly, cultivating virtue, and allowing outcomes to follow naturally. When these conditions exist, pleasure for women is a natural byproduct. It is not fleeting excitement. It is sustained, deep, and emotionally satisfying. She experiences connection, ease, and alignment. Her nervous system relaxes. Her attention is unguarded. Her emotional energy flows freely because there is no hidden danger, no emotional manipulation, no chaotic signals. The depth of pleasure is proportional to the depth of stability, presence, and integrity the man embodies. In essence, the man who practices the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius in modern life becomes naturally attractive, not by strategy or performance, but by embodying qualities that create an environment where emotional, mental, and subtle psychological pleasures can arise. This is the path toward a long-lasting, meaningful connection that does not fade with novelty or excitement. It is built on character, not manipulation, and is recognized intuitively as safety, trust, and ease. This is why Stoic principles are not just philosophical musings. They are practical tools for relational and emotional mastery that lead to natural, effortless attraction and sustainable pleasure. Remember, attraction isn't about tricks. It's about becoming the best version of yourself. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly lessons on self-mastery and meaningful connections.